Totally Football Show. Today, Premier League action from Liverpool and Nottingham to Arsenal v Tottenham. Midweek ratings, we're allotting them. So Arne Slot make high standard subs and Ange Spurs make substandard efforts and so much more. Newcastle walloping Wolves, Brentford's brave comeback v City, actual Reece James and much more. It's all coming up in this Totally Football Show. It's Thursday the 16th of January, reports suggest. And here in the warm afterglow of a big midweek session, we're joined by Duncan Alexander.
Hello, James.
Natalie Gedra of Sky Sports.
Hi, James.
And Rory Smith, also of The Athletic. Yeah. Hi, Rory.
Hello.
Rory, you've just been listening to our Tuesday show.
I have, yes. I'm a couple of days behind. I like to savour it.
Right, okay. And you particularly mentioned one major story, didn't you?
I think there's only one story in Europe this week, isn't there? And in fact, possibly the world. And that is the Lazio falconer and his prosthetic appendage. I don't know why. This is the bit I think people are really intrigued by. He's called a falconer even though it's an eagle.
Right.
Yeah, that was baffling me. And also, why don't Lazio and Palace play a pre-season friendly and go eagle to eagle?
And
tune in.
Benfica.
Benfica, yeah.
Benfica
well,
there.
do you know what? I think the Benfica and the Lazio Eagles certainly are brothers and sisters they're of the same eagle family.
Oh, right. Like
Yeah, I
brothers.
believe so. Olympia and Vittorio, I might be getting those names. I might have just made those names up. Further to, I mean, we've reported on this story. Basically, the guy who handles the eagle, which flies around Lazio's matches at the opening of, had problems with the opening of his flies. Actually, funny enough, because he did a penis intervention, and it was successful. So successful that a picture he took post-op showed an alarming tent-like area of his, sheet, hospital bed sheet. Anyway, he put that in his social media and was invited on all sorts of things because he's quite famous because he's the bloke who handles the eagle. And he got fired by Lazio as a result. Claudio Lotito said he could not forgive the falconer's action. Kind of W.B. Yeats makes you think of, doesn't it? Turning and turning in the widening gyre. Anyway, the bad news, and I think this is dramatic, much as you may titter, is that poor old Benabe has now barricaded himself. He's lived at Lazio's training ground for the last 15 years, and he's now refusing to come out with his Eagles. He's demanding that the club...
This is like Game of Thrones. Swap eagles for dragons. What's he going to do when he comes out finally?
I don't know.
Dracarys. Surely they need to get a bit of air. You'd have thought.
The Eagles... Yeah,
I would like to understand the structure of this barricade.
I don't know, actually. That's a good point.
Yeah.
How effective will it be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How much food does he have for himself and the Eagles?
How quickly did he erect it?
Also,
Natalie's making it sound a bit like he might eat the eagles.
Well, it is. I don't think anything is.
Maud of Gloucester, a very famous medieval thing. King John imprisoned Maud and her son in a dungeon.
Right.
And they both died because King John was a bad man, but Maud at one point tried to eat her son. So there are echoes of that.
Thanks, Duncan, for that. I was going over something about big energy, but you just totally killed that vibe. Let's get on to some results, eh? Tuesday, West Ham beat Fulham 3-2 in Graham Potter's first home game in charge. That's Cottagers' first loss in 10 in the league. Brentford came from 2-0 down to draw 2-2 at home to Man City. Bournemouth went to Chelsea and drew 2-2 too. It took a 95th minute free kick from the who now? Reece James to earn Chelsea a point. And at the City ground, Liverpool drew 1-1 with Nottingham Forest. On Wednesday, Arsenal's 2-1 win then in the North London derby with Spurs moved themselves back to 4 points off the top and left Spurs manager Ange Postecoglou looking positively funereal. Elsewhere, David Moyes had his first game back at Everton. They promptly lost 1-0 at home to Aston Villa. Newcastle beat Wolves 3-0 for their 9th win in a row in all competitions. Woo! And Palace won 2-0 at Leicester. That's now 5 defeats in a row for the Foxes. On Thursday night, these games haven't happened yet for us, Saints take on Man United and Ipswich are up against Brighton. Woo! We're going to begin with that North London derby. Duncan, you were actually there at the Emirates.
I was, yeah. It was a really good game. It was kind of what you want from a local derby. Spurs took the lead very much against the run of play, but Arsenal didn't really panic. There wasn't really a sense of panic. It felt quite like last season. It felt like they were let off the leash a bit more. Their pressing had gone up several notches, I would say. Martin Odegaard, who is very good at that, did look a bit more back to his old self as well. And yeah, an own goal from a corner, well worked, and Nico Jova's fiendish mind.
Right. The corner, though, wasn't really a corner.
Yeah, well, I couldn't see that
That's true.
because it was the other side of the pitch for me, but I did hear afterwards that it apparently had taken a deflection back off Trossard.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I think you see that quite a lot, and I think throughout the season, clubs will get a few of those for the man against them. But in a VAR age, it seems weird that so many things can be kind of re-refereed, but not that. You'd think,
Thank goodness, hey.
Well, I think Arsenal probably would have won nonetheless.
They had the chances, did they not?
They created, lots of chances, and I think that was the thing, that the issues that have plagued them in recent games were still there, but Tottenham were not as good as Newcastle or Manchester United, so they managed to beat them, and they are now, I would say, back in the title race.
Okay, it's official. After the week they've had, defeat at home to Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, defeat on penalties at home to Man United in the FA Cup, and with an injury-ravaged squad, Gabriel Jesus now out for a long time, presumably with ACL, yikes. This was a game that really did require some character, particularly when they went a goal down, and boy, did they get it. Mars Lewis-Skelly, among the many, I'm sure that those around you were applauding Duncan. Lovely interview he did post-game on the Premier League's kind of worldwide output with Ian Wright. Did you see that?
Didn't see that
Talked
either.
about his gran. Right. Ian said, who was here? Your family here? Your friend? He said, my gran. I had to get my tackles in for my gran. I'm sure I'm not weak.
That's nice. He got substituted and tried to walk off a la old substitutions, and the Spurs players shoved him off too.
And he got a yellow card in that.
Yeah, which was a bit harsh, I thought. But he got a massive standing ovation as he walked round. So it was. I think it was the first Premier League North London derby to have 3 18-year-olds all starting. So
it was.
Both clubs down to the bare bones. I mean, Archie Gray, again, 18 and playing centre half in a big game. He looked probably their most accomplished defender. So fair play to him. But yeah, it was an important win for Arsenal. They've obviously got yet another home game this weekend. So, but Liverpool, stumbling a bit. So we might have a title race, which is what we all want.
Has anyone ever not wanted to be somewhere more, present company accepted, more than Ange didn't want to be in those post-game interviews?
But this is kind of his routine now.
Didn't he look a bit different, like almost beaten?
From a person who has interviewed him after losses, no, he didn't.
He
looked exactly the same, just staring at the floor and not wanting to be there. And honestly, I don't really... I feel for him in the end, because I know it is hard to be in that position of interviewing him when he doesn't want to be there, and it looks like he's lacking explanations, because it is hard to understand some things that happen to Spurs, and others are quite obvious, the injuries and the lack of big players stepping up. But at the same time, first half, they didn't really show up. When if Spurs are getting beaten because they are just playing very offensive football and making themselves very exposed, it's one thing. But if they're not doing their thing, and that's what happened in the first half, they were very passive. And I think this is why he was so frustrated. The first half, they were so passive. Second half, it improved. And then you see big players like Sonny, who scored, but... at the same time, he hasn't been producing much. Even Kulusevski, who's been brilliant this season, didn't really show his high levels of football. So I kind of feel for him. I don't resent him for that.
They've lost 4 of their last 5. The other game in that sequence, a 2-2 draw with potential relegation rivals. I think we should call them Wolves.
Is it their third lowest points total of the Premier League era? Is that right at this stage of the season? That they're sort of on track for like 40-something points. That is, it's quite bad.
And yet a week ago they beat Liverpool 1-0 in a Carabao Cup match.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah,
so, swings and roundabouts.
And they could have taken a point here as well at the end.
Yeah, I mean, that was Arsenal's fault for not putting it to bed. And then, Pedro Porro hit the post in injury time with a sort of cross-come shot. But, yeah, I mean, they're a weird team. They're on a goal difference of plus 11, which is better than Forest, who are third. And yet they're below West Ham, who are on minus 14.
And have just fired their manager for being really bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, only three teams in the goal difference era have finished in lower than 10th with a goal difference of more than plus 10, and Spurs are on track to be the fourth team. So when they're good, they're very good. But when they're bad, which is increasingly more often, then they're not. And Ange says he always wins something in the second season, but
they are alive in the cups.
they might win the championship in his third season. So
I think it's the injuries are the kind of overall. That's the thing that buys him time. It buys him space. It's not. It's both explanation and excuse, isn't it? It's ultimately they have got this sort of decimated squad that they're trying to operate with, especially when I think the two most important players in Ange's system are the centre halves. He needs Van de Ven and Romero to be fit, particularly Van de Ven, because then you can play the high line. You've got this sort of cyborg man who can sort of save you on the counter. The question I think is probably what happens when those players get back. Do they get injured again? Does seem to be a bit of a theme with Postecoglou's Spurs? And if results don't turn pretty spectacularly, that's when I think Ange maybe has a problem, because I got the sense that kind of more and more Spurs fans were deserting him a couple of weeks ago. We're kind of thinking, okay, enough's enough. I think he's adapted slightly. I don't think Spurs are quite as Spurs as they were. I don't think they're quite as kind of fundamentalist to his principles as they were a couple of months ago. They seem a little bit more inhibited, which I think is the right move given the kind of situation with the squad. But he's going to need a bit of a kind of spectacular uptick in form to really convince people that he can turn it around. And it's hard to see where it comes from. Partly they're trapped in that injury cycle where you're overloading players who are kind of filling in. And partly because I'm not sure that the plan A is good enough to kind of sweep all before it, even when everybody's fit.
Indeed. Spurs, of course, famously the only team in the Premier League to have any injuries whatsoever. Absolutely nobody's making do with threadbare squads. But the issue I felt with his post-game comments was that he seemed to be talking about the players just not buying into it anymore, the players not being up for a North London derby, which in Tottenham terms is pretty unforgivable stuff, no?
Yeah, I think he meant that because the team was so passive in the first half. And addressing to what Rory just said, maybe they are stuck in this in-between of we can't be ourselves, our fundamental selves, because we don't have the players to do that. But at the same time, we can't make a big swift. And then we have this confusing first half where Arsenal are just throwing everything. We find a goal, and then Arsenal just keep doing their thing, and ultimately they win the match. Because the North London derby it's honestly one of my favorite fixtures of the season because it's always so intense. And the intensity comes from both sides, even when Spurs are not doing well. We've seen this happening in previous seasons, and it just wasn't there. I think that was the most worrying part for me.
What about Duncan's assertion that Arsenal are back in the title race? Rory?
I don't think they were ever out of it, to be honest. Arsenal's fixtures from this point on are notably more kindly than Liverpool's. So I think the margin of error is relatively slim. They can't afford to drop a huge number of silly points. But the main thing for me is I think we're all in the football commentariat thinking about the season wrong, because it's not a Man City season. It's not a 95-point season. It's not the sort of season where if you drop points, you're done. Liverpool will drop points. Arsenal will drop points. City could easily close that gap over the next couple of months too, because if they hit a vein of form, which obviously the draw at Brentford doesn't suggest is about to happen immediately, I'm not sure there's anyone flawless enough to kind of sail away with it. So yeah, I think Arsenal are still, as they always have been, in the thick of it.
Good Lord.
Oh, thank God, right? Oh, those flawless seasons. We've had enough of those.
Enough of that. Enough
But
of that.
they've kind of changed the way that we kind of approach. And like James, you must be struck by the similarities to how the Premier League is covered now to how Serie A was in the 90s, where like you get like a Juve in Crisi headline after they drew, and it would be like, this is unacceptable, fire Lippi. And it's the same now. Like the pitch at which everything is conducted is totally nonsensical, but it at least had some rationale when you knew that if you had to win the title, if you were going up against a full strength, fully on form City, as Klopp said in one of the years where Liverpool came second, you have to be perfect. You don't have any other choice. This season isn't like that. You don't have to be perfect.
There are similarities until Palace get in a eagle handler who then performs major surgery to his undercarriage.
So if Benfica's eagle is called Vittoria,
Yeah, I think.
and Lazio's is called Olympia,
Do you know, I could just Google
what's
this.
Palace
one,
called?
well, the old one was called Layla, I think, but it died in 2020, not of COVID, of someone else.
Okay.
Bird
You're
flu,
all
maybe.
Bird flu,
sunshine
yeah.
and light, aren't
Yeah,
you, today?
But they have got a new one. I don't know what it's called.
Kayla and Phoenix.
Phoenix?
Phoenix is pretentious.
Yeah, no, until Kayla died, in June 2020. And then in August 2024, Crystal Palace introduced Phoenix, the eagle. And that's a bird that's going to have some identity
Yeah,
problems,
that's
I
asking
reckon.
for troubles. Yeah, that's asking for
Phoenix, the
troubles.
eagle. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
That's wrong. Liverpool not flawless as they demonstrated Tuesday in their trip to the City Ground. That's up next. Game we were all really looking forward to on Tuesday. Nottingham Forest hosting Liverpool. And it didn't disappoint. Particularly one moment, what was it, about half an hour, 20 minutes to go, when Arne Slot made the greatest substitution in the history of the Premier League.
Tsimikas and Diogo Jota.
Yeah, so they're
but
a goal
he's-
down.
No, he doesn't agree with you.
I mean,
No.
I'm not sure I agree with me either, but that was the way it was hailed. A double substitution, they're a goal down, they win a corner, he brings on Tsimikas and Diogo Jota, and immediately Tsimikas takes the corner, which Jota heads in.
Yeah, he doesn't agree with that because it was a corner. It
Right.
wasn't something that they practiced, like a combination that they necessarily practice with in a build-up or something. It was just a corner. This is why he said he can't take the credit for that specific combination, even though they scored like that in the cup and they were talking about it. Apparently, both players were talking about it in pitch side before they entered, and they said, "Oh, remember that goal? Yes, let's try to do it again." And
I mean, at
apparently
Arsenal,
it
there'd have
worked.
been a mural would have been painted already by this point.
Not so much a mural, but a Murillo at
Oh,
Forest
yeah. I was
in
just-
this game.
I just came to this podcast to talk about Murillo.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
because
just-
Nottingham, what a team they are. I mean, Liverpool did get the point, and they deserved it. The shots they were peppering Matt Sells with in that second half. But Nottingham Forest, what a team they are, would at one end, steal at the other. Steal in the form of ex-Corinthians centre-half Murillo.
Yes. We all knew about it. That's the thing. When he left Corinthians, we were heartbroken because we sold him for peanuts. It was like 15 million pounds with add-ons, and everyone was furious because we did kind of the same thing with Marquinhos when Marquinhos left a few years ago to go to Roma. Everybody was buzzing about him, the next big thing, and he just played. Murillo played 27 matches as a professional in Brazil, and he left. He came to Forest. It was that quick. And he's only 22. I don't think people remember that enough because he's big and he looks older, but he was just all over. He was the number of blocks, 18 clearances against Liverpool, the most made by any player in a Premier League game this season. And he just looks composed and mature, and he just stepped up to the occasion. So
One day, will he score that shot from kind of near the halfway line that he keeps trying?
I like that. I like that he keeps trying, He can play from the back, and he can risk these things, and he's passionate about defending as well, like throwing his body against the ball and just getting those blocks. So he's big.
Murillo's shorts, this is a listener, it says... Murillo is the player Van Dijk used to be, and he's only 22. Name me another centre-back in the world who can defend, pass, and dribble as well as he can. He's unique, question mark, exclamation mark. Natalie, surely he starts the next Brazil match.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. He just got his first call-up for the national team in November. He didn't get any minutes because Dorival Jr., on both matches, he started Marquinhos alongside Gabriel Magalhães.
Yeah.
So, yes, the thing is, but Gabriel can't play for Murillo to have his chance, which is, a bit difficult considering Gabriel's doing pretty well. So, yeah.
Also doing pretty well, Chris Wood scoring his 13th goal of the season after 8 minutes. How many actual shots did Forest have in this game?
Not very many. There was,
6.
I think, was there another one that was a sort of half chance midway through the first half? But yeah, they didn't, after the goal, pose a huge amount of threat to Liverpool.
6 shots, 3 on target.
3 on target. There you are. Third in the table, 6 points above the team in 6th, so outside what will likely be the Champions League places, that team being Man City. They're heading for the Champions League unless a remarkable slump happens. And I guess by your Arsenal and even Man City metric, they are still in the title race themselves, although that would be extraordinary. Liverpool, will they be happy just to drop 2 points from this game?
I think to Rory's point earlier, people have kind of forgotten what a title race looks like. This is pretty normal. Liverpool have lost 1 game all season. Yeah, they've drawn their last 2, but they've still got a good advantage. I think they'd have taken this. If you'd have said to them after 20 games you'll be in this position, they would have snapped your hand off. So yeah, I think it's fine.
I think it was a good point in the context of third versus first. It was a good point given the nature of the game. It would have been a better point had Arsenal not beaten Spurs last night, obviously, but Chelsea and City both drawing meant it felt a bit like, okay, this is a good result. But the thing that I think if I was Liverpool would be most encouraging, they created loads of chances in that second half against probably the best, apart from Arsenal, maybe the best defensive team in the league. They could easily have scored 5 if not for Matt Sells' wonderful performance. And obviously, like, having a good goalkeeper is not a form of cheating. But the Liverpool play, like, they really clicked in attack in the second half. So I think it's going to the City ground and drawing in any circumstance, I think, is probably fine.
Right.
Given how good Forest have been, it makes it good. And like Duncan says, you're allowed to draw games away from home in most title races. That's not been true for the last few years, but it looks like it will be true this season.
Okay, well, up next for Liverpool is another difficult away ground to visit. The G-Tech, Saturday, 3 o'clock. They're going to be taking on Brentford there, while Arsenal, their nearest rivals, 4 points back, but Liverpool have that game in hand. Arsenal will be hosting Aston Villa, which was a fixture which some say cost them the title last season. Certainly they had that remarkable run at the end of the campaign, winning 16 of their last 18. The only one that they actually lost in there was the 2-0 at home to Villa, and they ended up finishing 2 points behind City. So, could be key. Could also see Daniel Marlon make his Villa debut against Arsenal, who apparently used to play for. I completely forgotten that.
He was at the academy, yeah.
He was at the academy.
He never played. I don't think he ever played meaningful first team minutes. But he decided, as I think Seb said on the Euro show this week, I think he decided that he didn't want to go through the kind of Premier League 2 route and went to PSV Eindhoven instead. But I'm sure he will. Yeah, it will be a meaningful thing for Daniel Marlon.
Very nice, very nice. That's a big game for Arsenal. What about Brentford-Liverpool, especially after the drama at the G-Tech this midweek? Natalie, you're going to this game.
Yes, I am. Well, it's inspiring for them, isn't it? Because they had this very positive record. They were unbeaten at home, Brentford, but then they faced Nottingham Forest, Arsenal, Manchester City, and now they have Liverpool. So yeah, they lost.
And Plymouth.
And Plymouth. So Plymouth, yeah. Okay, let's do Plymouth then. So Plymouth was the one that no one was expecting them to lose. It was a bit of a bump in the road, but if you look at like the level of opponents, like they lost to Arsenal, they got a really good point against City. They were pressing them until the very end. It's the 7th goal they score after the 90th minute this season. So yeah, it's quite impressive.
2-0 down. From a City perspective, this is pretty disastrous, no? 2-0 down. Sorry, 2-0 up. City were with 8 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah. And they played quite well. I mean, not perfectly, but they did have a bit more of their old sheen to them. I mean, the first goal, the cross from De Bruyne was lovely, and the finish from Foden tucked in. And then Foden got another one sort of from a, ball bobbling around. And it looked like, okay, maybe this will be 3 wins in a row for City. And, yeah, they might be sort of building something. But then those defensive issues, they just can't deal with crosses. And Brentford are good at putting crosses in.
So dealing with crosses and goals in flurries, two of the recurring
Yeah.
issues for City. You were watching this game,
Yeah.
the Brentford City game.
Yeah, no, the thing is, City, they were creating a lot of good chances, and Kevin was finding those passes that he does, and it was looking good. But defensively, I felt like Brentford was getting to their box too quickly, and we've seen this happening in the past few matches. So defensively, they still have a lot of issues. Nathan Ake is a busy man. Poor guy, he's just handling everything, and they were quite wasteful, City, which is not very usual. We're not used to seeing City being so wasteful, and then Brentford just took their chance and went toe to toe with City until the end and pressed them, and they can be very good, especially this season. I feel like Thomas Frank keeps talking about adding layers to their game, so they have more variety. They're not just that team who can really defend and then go direct. They have more options, so they could really make things hard for City, and they got the point. It was a really good point for them.
Post game, Pep went full Pep on Stefan Ortega. Was that fair? What was going on there?
But he was shouting and then hugging
I
and then
think he was
shouting
saying
again.
he should have been wasting a bit more time, like take a yellow card for time wasting and stuff. But he does no manager likes a post-game on-pitch discussion more than Pep Guardiola. So.
Very, very physical, very emotional. Yeah, I felt quite inspired just watching it. I mean, I think that the energy that Pep transmits, I mean, maybe it's too much for himself, and that's an issue we could explore at some point. But yeah.
But obviously City are bringing in defensive reinforcements. Kusanov, who looks muscular, to say the least.
Well,
Loads of
Jules
shoulder
on
choke.
the Tuesday show that Rory was very kindly referencing, full of praise for Kusanov.
Yeah, and Vitor Reis. How did I say it?
Vitor Reis.
Yeah.
Close enough, yeah.
Again, huh?
Yeah, you don't remember that in Portuguese that R is a trick.
Yeah.
They
that's
actually
true.
mean H.
Wow.
Reis,
In
yeah.
Brazil they do, but not in Portugal.
Reis. Yeah.
Anyway, he looks classy, the new John Stone. So, I mean, it's tough to chuck two teenagers into the
But again-
melee of the Premier League, but, they are at least trying to address the issues.
And then you get the fact that they're signing Marmoush as well, or they look like they are
now
close
that-
to signing Marmoush. Which I think on one level makes a huge amount of sense, because he has a similar kind of profile, I think, to Julian Alvarez, in the sense that he can kind of do lots of things across the attacking line, which obviously we all like now. Versatility is a strength. But there's part of me that just thinks that you're buying two very inexperienced defenders for relatively big sums. I mean, Palmeiras maybe not getting quite as much as they want for the Brazilian defender whose name I won't pronounce correctly for Natalie. And Kusanov's been around at Lens for about 18 months. That's they are young, obviously hugely talented, very promising, all that stuff. And then Marmoush, Frankfurt are very much of the view that this is as much money as they're going to be able to get for him, which to me would just be a little bit of a red flag if I were City. Like, Frankfurt clearly think they're selling at the peak of his development. Do you want to be the person paying that sum? I'm not certain you do. It does look a little bit like City are slightly, what's the word? Not desperate, but like things are slightly more urgent for City than they're used to them being.
Their hand has been forced a little bit, perhaps.
It's
Frankfurt currently declining City's offers, but we'll see how that develops.
It's like when you got loads of stuff in like an Amazon basket and you're like, oh yeah, I could just, those three things I've had saved for a bit, it's time. So
Yeah. City approaching checkout. They have Ipswich this weekend. After the Ipswich game anyway, City have Paris Saint-Germain. And I bet that's on Pep's mind, isn't it? Yeah, tough run of fixtures. Brentford, meanwhile, after that stirring finale against the champions, will be hosting Liverpool. And Natalie, you're going along. Can they, Natalie? Can they?
They show they can be very competitive, and yeah. Well, why not? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's that season, Yeah, where teams are dropping points and unlikely things are happening. So, yeah.
Okay. Full fixture list for Matchday 22. It begins Saturday lunchtime with Newcastle Bournemouth. Bournemouth, who've now gone 10 matches unbeaten in all competitions. Newcastle, as mentioned earlier, now won 9 in a row. But
Do you not think it seems like this season, like there's quite a lot of teams who are unbeaten in 10 matches in all competitions. Like Newcastle are unbeaten; they haven't lost since like September or something. Everyone seems to be on an unfeasible run of form, apart from Manchester City and Southampton. Is everyone just playing them all of the time?
Apparently.
But how is this happening and people are dropping points? I mean,
There's a lot of draws.
yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Anyway, it's 3 o'clock on Saturday. You've got West Ham, who are most certainly not winning many games in a row, but did get one at the weekend. This time around, they're facing Crystal Palace, who, if memory serves, have only lost one of their last 10 matches in the league.
See?
Palace. Lots of draws in there, though.
Will Phoenix fly from South London to East London? Maybe.
Possibly.
I think that would be quite a high-level falconry, wouldn't it? To get it to
Well, that far, really?
wiggle.
I was once at...
I mean, maps, distances are often measured by that kind of
No, but I
flight.
think do you not lose control of the eagle once it's kind of just in the sky?
I was once at a country fair in Brockwell Park in South London, and the
That's
eagle...
not the country.
No, you don't need a country fair there. That's inappropriate.
Well, that was kind of the point. But yeah, the eagle man, I'm not going to call him a falconer, he lost control of his birds and it flew off, and he got very agitated. And
I'm not surprised. That's his living.
Yeah. So, could happen.
Eagle handling content, we got it. At 3 o'clock on Saturday, West Ham Palace, with or without feathered friends. Then Brentford are taking on Liverpool. And Leicester up against Fulham. Fulham who got their first defeat in 10, to your point, Rory, about good runs.
They're all unbeaten.
Leicester very much beaten, though. That's 5 defeats in a row that they had.
6.
6 now. 6 defeats in a row after they got beaten by...
Palace.
Palace. That's right. We'll
the
come
Eagle
on to
did
that.
not go to Leicester, I can confirm.
5:30, it's Arsenal against Aston Villa. And then on Sunday, you've got 3 games. Man United, Brighton. Brighton have won 5 of their last 6 Premier League meetings with Man United. Did you know that, Rory?
I didn't, but I'm just amazed that anyone doesn't win every game they play at the moment. I think this is a big test for United. I'm presuming, obviously, we're recording before United play Southampton. I'm presuming Manchester United will have won that game because Southampton aren't very good. But Brighton's a real test, as it's not like an Arsenal away or a Liverpool away where you kind of knew that the United players would be really up for it and that there was an element of like dignity being on the line. Brighton do have a good record against United. They are set up quite well, I think, to counteract what United are good at. And because it doesn't have quite that same allure as one of, the big traditional rivals, it's kind of a test of how much of this sort of mindset shift that Amorim and his players keep talking about. It's kind of a test of how true that is, because these are the sorts of games that United have fallen short in quite frequently for the last 12 years.
So true. Duncan winced when you said, I assume that United are going to win against Southampton. Why, Duncan?
I mean, they will. They will. But, I mean, I'm quite invested in Southampton getting past 11 points because I don't, Derby must never be surpassed. So they need to start picking up some points somewhere. And why not Old Trafford?
And
Why not?
also, there was such a big build-up for this. Bruno Fernandes and Ruben Amorim, they're all talking about the Southampton match. And now we're going to see... Yes! Now we're going to see...
right. This
in
is
terms
the real
of character.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Now we're going to see the character of this team, of this squad, of these players. Because, it's Southampton. So, yeah, I'd be surprised. If
Okay.
They, yeah.
Listen, you may well have already seen the result from that game. Dramatic irony, they call that. On Sunday, other games are Everton Spurs, which is on telly. Everton's last victory over Spurs at Goodison in the Premier League was December 2012. Who was the manager?
David Moyes.
Correct. And then at 4:30, you got Ipswich against Man City. And since we're doing this, the last time those two teams met at Portman Road, one of the teams was relegated at the final whistle. And it wasn't Ipswich, I can tell you that much. Yeah, different times for Man City those were. Anyway, and then on Monday you got Chelsea against Wolves, which, Natalie, you're going to as well.
Yes.
Busy. Oh, Vitor Pereira revealing after their 3-0 defeat to Newcastle midweek that Mario Lemina didn't play because he wants to leave the club. So problems for Wolves, who are goal difference behind Ipswich and thus in the bottom 3 currently. Newcastle, meanwhile, have just moved past Chelsea at the other end of the table into 4th spot after they beat Wolves, and Chelsea only managed a 2-2 draw with Bournemouth. You managed to watch this amongst everything else, the Chelsea-Bournemouth game, Natalie.
Yes, no,
Let's
I
talk
did.
about Bournemouth.
Yes, let's talk about Bournemouth, because I'm constantly impressed with how they managed to keep their levels of insane intensity with the amount of injuries they have. They didn't have a good first half against Chelsea. Chelsea was just enjoying their game for the first 45 minutes, and then second half they got the penalty, and it all kind of went badly for Chelsea, and Bournemouth just seized the occasion, and it's just so impressive how Semenyo is playing and delivering, and how they just keep pressing until the end. You know, they have like 12 first-team players out, both of their strikers, and they're still high press and intense, and like they have this clear game plan that all the players really embrace, and they had this preseason with Iraola, which is big, because for the way they play, they really need to prepare themselves physically for the rest of the season, and it seems to be working for them in this sense. I remember Pochettino when he was at Spurs, and everybody was talking about like his pre-seasons and how the players, when it got to the end of the season, they were doing well physically, and it kind of rings a bell when you compare to Bournemouth, because they had this pre-season. They struggled a little bit last season. They dropped form at the end of the season, but Andoni Iraola, he didn't have the pre-season with the team, so I think that is making a difference when they are feeling very stretched and still pushing opponents like they did with Chelsea.
Rory, you'll be intrigued to know that they've gone 10 matches unbeaten in all competitions.
Obviously. That's just standard now. Yeah, I agree with everything Natalie says.
They'll do well to continue that run, though, because their next 3 games are against Newcastle, Nottingham Forest and Liverpool. Oi, oi, oi.
Yeah, but then plenty of teams, including Arsenal and Manchester City, have discovered that the Vitality is quite a difficult place to go at the moment, and that Bournemouth are not a team that you want to face. So you wouldn't bet against them winning at least one of those games.
Really?
Maybe
Which
2.
one? Newcastle's away.
That's tougher. Also, it's a long way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Andy Jennings writes in on that very theme. Bournemouth supporters coaches will set off from Newcastle from Weymouth at 2 a.m. on Saturday. Wow. Couple the journey with the stairs, says Andy, and our injury crisis. Will it be a successful trip? Question mark. The stairs being the ones at St James's, is that right? Or
A lot of stairs.
A lot of
away
stairs,
fans
right.
are right up in the gods at St James's, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
true.
I mean, Weymouth, you should probably be supporting Weymouth, right, rather than Bournemouth.
I don't know.
I don't want to wade into
I can't argue with his
Dorset-based
choice.
rivalries.
The question, though, being, will it be a successful trip? Is that the game that you see the Cherries winning, Rory?
No, not necessarily. It's Newcastle are flying. Newcastle look fantastic. They have a real, similar to Forest actually. They have a technical ability and a real like physical intensity that I think a lot of teams find it really hard to match. But then you could say the same about Bournemouth, I suppose. So that will be, at the risk of sounding like a television pundit, that'll be a good game.
It certainly will.
It will be entertaining, definitely,
Are
especially.
you going to that one? Natalie, I've lost track.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm
You have
not.
to set off at 2:30 a.m. from Weymouth. It's the only way of getting there.
Yeah,
But-
the Jurassic Coast is where
Ob-
all
ob-
football journeys start.
Obviously, like that Newcastle Bournemouth shouldn't be a 12:30 kickoff. That's stupid.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you can't
Well, it gives them
change
more
the
time
fact
to
that,
get back.
that those two places are quite far away. Like you just can't change that. So even if they kicked it off at 3 o'clock,
What's that? American listeners writing in right now.
I think even by American standards, it's quite a long way. It's not Los Angeles to New York, but it's quite far. But even if it kicks off at 3 o'clock, that's only 2 hours later. They'd still have to leave at 4:30 in the morning. Like
Right.
it's not.
Did Newcastle benefit from Manchester United's FA Cup win more than any other team? Because that got United into Europe and eliminated Newcastle, and they obviously been able to sort of just concentrate on domestic matters this season, like they did 2 years ago, and they look great. So,
Yeah. Less chance of Alexander Isak getting injured, as he sometimes is prone to do. He got a brace in the 3-0 over Wolves, just shoehorning this in right now. Scoring for the 8th Premier League game in a row, Rory. And
I'm not impressed by this stuff anymore.
Okay. Sorry, Natalie.
No, and Isaac, both of his goals, like the first one, he takes the ball all the way from the left, and Gordon is sitting as a false nine, and then it's good that you have Gordon because he has this versatility and he can move around. But it shows how Isaac is this mobile number 9. As much as he's a very, very striker, he's very strike-ish. He's very mobile as well, so he can read spaces really well. He can move around the box. And then his second goal is like classic number 9, just good pass from Bruno to him, and he's so composed. He just turns and shoots.
So we like Newcastle. We're pretty impressed with Bournemouth as well. What do we think about Chelsea, who did manage to snatch a point in that game against Bournemouth through that 95th minute direct free kick from Reece James? I don't think anyone had that on their bingo card. His first Premier League goal in 2.5 years.
Yeah, especially because Caicedo started on the right, even though Reece James and Malo Gusto they were both available on the bench. Chelsea is just, they keep having the same problems, that is, they're being too wasteful. They can't kill off matches. Their first half was, according to Maresca, one of the best 45 minutes Chelsea had all season. And they were creating a lot of chances. And you had Nicholas Jackson assisting Cole Palmer, but at the same time you had Nicholas Jackson wasting a couple of big chances. That kind of makes me wonder if it's a good idea for Chelsea to really let Christopher Nkunku go. Because if you're relying on Nicholas Jackson to be your goal-scoring striker, then I don't know if it was ever the plan A was that, because obviously he has been in a really positive season, scoring a lot of goals and assisting, and his football has progressed, but you need to rely on him to score goals, because it's either him or Cole Palmer.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't long ago that Nkunku was the figure whose injury was holding Chelsea back, the figure around whom the team was maybe going to be built. So, yeah, it's remarkable how that has failed to really come together for both sides.
Yeah,
How
he
likely
wants
is he to
minutes.
leave?
There's just reports, and I do understand that he wants minutes. He hasn't started that many Premier League matches, especially. He's been playing cup competitions, so it is understandable. But Maresca said he's not worried about Chelsea's form, because he's seeing how much the team has been producing. It's just that against Crystal Palace and against Ipswich was kind of the same story, just creating a lot of chances and not killing off the game, and then you have Bournemouth pressing you until the end.
Just on Nkunku, I think the injuries have obviously made it difficult for him to try to get any real rhythm, and they seem to have slowed his momentum. But it is interesting that there's not that many players that come out of that Red Bull system who justify their enormous fees, I would say, or their kind of high reputation. Werner, maybe not. Obviously, Haaland, yes, but then he had the sort of interstitial Dortmund step. Apart from that, which big Red Bull sales have kind of really gone on to fulfil the kind of promise that they showed within the energy drink empire? Szoboszlai, Konate, there's not many.
Interesting angle, Rory.
It's curious, because the whole Red Bull system is we will find talent, buy low, sell high, and we are creating like the ultra modern footballers, which they are. But I'm just not sure. There's probably more in Germany, to be fair, than there are in the Premier League. But yeah, it's the hit rate's not great, I don't think.
Is it because they have a defined structure within the organisation, which when they're taken out of, a little bit like Ajax players often fail to match their performances outside of the...
They do well in the Bundesliga because of counter-attacking, which is much higher there. I think this season, the Premier League there's more counter-attacks in the Premier League this season, so it hasn't helped Timo Werner very much. But
he might be beyond help. Yeah,
he might have gone to another plane. But yeah, I think it's a really good point from Rory. But yeah, hopefully the whole system doesn't collapse after this podcast. It might do.
Jurgen Klopp.
Talking of things that collapse, we should shout out to Cole Palmer's goal in this game, because he dummied and Mark Travers just fell down.
Oh yeah,
it was a lovely
his
finish.
movement was perfect. Yeah,
Lovely segue too. There you go. Chelsea dropping down after 5 games without a win, Rory, to 5th place. That's where all those negative results are
Champions
going.
League place.
Duncan knows numbers. Does all this stuff have to add up? Like, do all these teams who've not lost in 10, does that then have to be like an
No one's
equal...
checked. No one has checked, and we might have hit the biggest loophole in football ever. So, yeah.
But 5th for now, the way the coefficients are looking, will get you into the Champions League next season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A couple other things to talk about. We'll take a very quick break, and then we'll be back with those. Here's a question from Will Moxon, who sent it in on that old social media site, which I hadn't seen it till now, because we're all on Blue Sky, which is a nicer vibe. Come and try it. Anyway, Will, you asked, were both Patrick and Justin Kluivert scored against Chelsea? Any other father, son, or siblings to score against the same team? I mean, that feels like a pretty broad category, no? There must be loads of them.
Yeah. If you expand it abroad, probably Cesare Maldini and Paolo Maldini scored against the same team. But I don't
know if Cesare did much scoring.
But
Nobody did much scoring in his days, but
I don't know. He played for so long. He had such a successful career.
Yeah,
there.
and Daniel Maldini's probably scored against somebody that his dad scored against.
Yes, the Maldini dynasty then. But I have a really good story on that.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but we're flying to Brazil, of course.
Okay.
In 2014, Rivaldo.
Rivaldo.
Yes, Rivaldo, who had a very successful spell at Barcelona, and he played
at Milan as well.
Milan as well, yes. So he was president of Mojimirim, a very small team. He was the player as well, because why not? You're the president, you're fit, and you want to, play some matches. And he played alongside his son, Rivaldinho. Nice. Yes. So they even scored in the same match.
No way!
Yes, against Macaé.
Fantastic.
Yes, against Macaé for the 2nd division of the National League. Rivaldo retired the following year, but that in 2014 he was 42 and his son was 19. So there you go.
That's magnificent. Of course, we could have had that in the FA Cup
I'm just
game.
hearing Darren Ferguson saying, "Can we stop this segment? He doesn't like it." So.
Good. No, I mentioned some things we needed to get onto. Obviously, that was one. Many thanks, Will Moxon, and everybody who wrote in. Let's also talk about Crystal Palace. They're going to lose Trevor Chalobah because Chelsea's problems are such that they have activated the clause to recall the on-loan player from Palace.
Such an EFL move that happens this time of year. It happens all the time in EFL. So clubs will loan a player out and go, "Oh, he's actually quite good. Let's loan him somewhere else or bring him back." But you very rarely see it in the Premier League. But
all right.
I feel bad for Palace because he's done well there.
Presumably they managed to get that draw against Chelsea without him, though, them being his parent club, and they certainly didn't field him midweek when they went to the King Power and beat Leicester 2-0. 1 defeat in 10 in the league now for the Eagles. Yeah,
they're now level with Spurs, obviously behind Spurs because of Tottenham's unverifiable mad goal difference.
I mean, if we hadn't spent the first 10 minutes of the show talking about how bad Spurs are being, that would be impressive, I think. But
well, no, they're on the rise, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's about momentum. Palace on the up, Spurs not.
Not so much.
But to be fair,
like an eagle. They're rising like an eagle.
Oh my God.
Natalie.
To be fair, it was pretty straightforward for Palace. It wasn't like they were playing glaring football and it was just a brilliant match against Leicester. It was more Leicester conceding a lot of goals, which has been happening in their 6 defeats in a row. It's 16 goals.
6 defeats in a row. There you go, Rory.
See, Rory? Yes.
Everything is... There's balance in all things. That's the thing. That's what we're learning.
16 goals conceded and only 2 goals scored in this run for Leicester. So Crystal Palace just went and did their thing, and Mateta played a really good match again. So it looks like the worst is behind them because they had a very weird start of the season and now they're in a good run.
And people did actually, some people who've been following Oliver Glasner's career with closely, were pointing out that his teams often did this kind of thing. At Frankfurt, he would have a very slow August, for example, until he'd sorted his ideas out about the team, and then boom, off they go. Anyway, Leicester is the worst behind them? Possibly not. They're currently down in penultimate place. They were outside the relegation zone when Steve Cooper was sacked. They're not now.
Just 4 points from 24 since Van Nistelrooy took over.
They're buying someone from Parma. Wayu Koulibaly.
Are they?
That might help. They need defenders. They need a defender.
Oh yeah, all hopes on the January transfer window because they don't have enough players to get themselves out of this situation.
They are hosting Fulham on Saturday. Meantime, Rory, amongst all the games to watch this midweek, you ended up with Everton Aston Villa on. How did that go for you?
Yeah, only just Charlie told me to watch it. He said, "Can you?" He said, producer Charlie said, "Duncan's at Arsenal. Natalie has somehow stammed her way to watching Newcastle Wolves. Please, will you watch Everton Aston Villa?" To which obviously I said, "No, I'm going to watch the Traitors." But then it turned out that most of the Everton game happened before the Traitors started.
Right.
So I could watch both with a slight delay to the Traitors. And I regret it. I'm sure that the David Moyes story is very romantic. I think it is an appointment. It makes perfect sense for Everton. I think he will keep them up. But it was a bit of a reminder that Everton's problem is not necessarily just the manager. I think there's a dearth of quality in the squad outside the two central defenders and the goalkeeper. That is kind of what will keep them up. But they don't really look like scoring. They concede too many kind of half, 3/4 chances to ever be truly secure. I think Villa weren't great, but they found it relatively easy. I think it looked like one team that are quite good against a team that aren't. And a bit of a reality check for Everton, made up for by the fact that the Traitors was quite dramatic.
Okay, don't issue any spoilers, please. Watching Everton, though, in some ways counts as research towards a piece you're currently doing about Everton's season tickets for their new stadium, no?
Yeah, it's a rare example of a club doing something quite nice. So the way that Everton are migrating, to continue the bird theme, the season tickets to Bramley-Moore Dock is by tenure. So if you've had a season ticket at Goodison for 23 years or more, you get to pick first. 23 years is how far back Everton's records go. And the process started this week. And I just thought it'd be really interesting to speak to fans about what they were looking for in their new seats. Obviously, you have this massive blank canvas, 53,000 seats. What is it that's important to you? Is it the view? Is it kind of the facilities? Is it, do you want to be in a specific spot near the halfway line or the dugouts or behind one goal? Upper south of Bramley-Moore Dock seemed very popular, but a lot of the reasons were just distinctly Evertonian, in that very sort of self-knowing, quite funny way. So one person I spoke to said that he wanted to be close to a stairwell so he could get away if they're 4-0 down after 70 minutes. There was they're quite keen on what you do when you're leaving. But my favourite quote was a guy who said that he's sat in the park end at Goodison for quite a long time, which is obviously next to the Upper Bullens, which is where the away fans sit. And he said it's a miserable existence sitting near the away fans at a football match. And then he sort of paused and went, "Well, it's probably quite fun if you're quite good at football, but I wouldn't know." And I just thought that is a very Evertonian approach to the problem. But it'll be out in the next couple of days. I think it's really interesting because it's basically a chance to choose the perfect seat in a brand new stadium, and it kind of shows what people want from their matchday experience, from their seat at a football match. Isn't really the view or the weather or whatever else it might be. It's to be close to people that they know and love, which is quite sweet.
So true.
Yeah, I find that fascinating because I remember when Spurs had that process. And I was in touch. Actually, I had a friend who was working with that, and she was telling me how specific people were, in terms of, I want to be next to a certain group of people because we always chant together, or like this reflects on the atmosphere directly. So, God, it must be so stressful to arrange all these people in a new ground. But
because that could be, it's not just like booking a flight and you're trying to get 2 bookings in the same spot. This could be like 20, 30 years worth of football going. Everton did used to be good at football a lot of the time when David Moyes was there last time. Perhaps unfair to judge him on a game against Villa in which he'd only been in charge for a couple of days. Will things be any better this Sunday when they host Spurs?
Probably.
Yeah? That's 2:00 on Sunday, and it will be on television. Also, from the midweek, the one game we haven't come on to yet, which is a shame because it sounded like a real thriller, was the West Ham 3, Fulham 2 match on Tuesday. Graham Potter's first home game in charge. Lucas Paquetá playing as a false nine amid the Hammers injury crisis, and very effectively.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go.
No, Paquetá actually played as a false nine back in Flamengo
nice.
for a while. In 2017, it's been a while, but he scored in 2 cup finals playing as a false nine, and he played as a false nine in the academy and a few times after that. So he has this versatility that really can help West Ham now in the time of need with the amount of injuries they have up front. And I feel like he's the type of player who can really flourish with Graham Potter and the way he sets up his teams, and he can give this freedom for him to just express himself, do his thing. And, you know, he's a talented player. Maybe things will go well for him. It's the first time since March he scored on back-to-back games.
Indeed. He may be getting some competition, or at least some help up front, because there's a lot of suggestions that Potter has been told that West Ham will sign someone over the transfer window. One of the names being thrown around is Evan Ferguson, who worked with him, of course, at Brighton to create effect. Ooh. They only had 4 shots in this game, by the way, the Hammers, and they scored with 3 of them. Fulham had 21, but scored both their goals from crosses that just actually drifted into the net.
Yeah, it was a strange game in a lot of ways. Both goalkeepers weren't very good. It means it's been a bad week for former Arsenal goalkeepers, because Fabianski made mistakes in this game. Bernd Leno made mistakes in this game. Szczesny got sent off in the Super Cup. And Aaron Ramsdale's playing at Old Trafford tonight, so keep an eye out. But yeah, I mean, it's an important win for West Ham. But as you say, scoring 3 goals from 4 shots isn't very sustainable. So a striker is needed.
Yeah, and 2 of these goals were Fulham's mistakes as well. So which really annoyed Fulham fans, because they did play well. They created a lot of chances, and again they gave goals away by their own mistakes.
Cottagers, post that defeat, are still in the top half of the table in 9th. West Ham rising up to 12th now, a full 10 points away from the bottom 3, so that's nice. Action coming up then on Thursday night: United against Saints, Ipswich against Brighton, and then all that stuff coming up at the weekend. Now, I will be here on Sunday. Matt Davis-Adams will be hosting our Sunday night roundup, but do join him for that. And then for me, it's back on Tuesday with the Euro show, following up, Will
the falconer be out of the barricaded room? We simply don't know.
We don't know.
And we come full circle.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Many, many thanks to Rory.
I'm sorry. Duncan is gesturing an eagle.
Right, yeah. Or he's doing a Kevin Nolan. Yeah. Many, many thanks to Rory, to Duncan, to Natalie, to Liam and producer Charlie in the booth, and you listener. Have yourself a great weekend. Join us soon on Totally. From now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.